Okay, we're all set. Let's begin then with part two. The Spanish had an enormous zeal for evangelization. They just came out of the Ottoman Empire, 8 centuries of invasion by Moors, with Islam ruling over Spain. They just kicked them out. The economy is completely shot. There's a lot of people who have lost their livelihood, who have lost everything, and their only hope is in the new world. The stories, the streets are paved with gold, all of that mentality, a lot of them with nothing else to lose, decide to come to America and be part of the conquering forces. So, when Hernán Cortés is kicked out in 1519, he spends 2 years rallying everyone who was against the Aztec Empire. Particularly is welcomed by the 4 lords of Tlaxcala. The 4 rulers convert. They're baptized, and from there, their entire households and the people that they ruled over, they convert. So they are the first ones to help the Spanish. So it was just a handful of Spaniards that came. They would have not been able to conquer the Aztecs by themselves. So 200, 300 Spanish soldiers would not be able to conquer 200,000 Aztecs. Of course, they were slightly diminished by the disease, by the pox. That helped also. When they came, they finally attack Tenochtitlan, the Aztec city on the lake, and they begin, finally, when they conquer, August 13, 1521, the feast day of St. Hippolytus. When they finally conquer, they begin to destroy. The very first thing they destroy are the pyramids, the temples, the idols. Get rid of those things. Huitzilopochtli, the hummingbird god, becomes Huitzilobos, something like a wolfman. That in their mind, that's how they see him. And then Tlaloc, the god of rain, is somewhat of a vampire, bad-looking god. So that is their vision on the gods of the Aztecs. They believe that they are demons, that they need to be exorcised. So they're returning the land back to God by the destruction of the pyramids and the destruction of all the statues. They believe that the natives are, that they were creatures. They don't have a soul. They're creatures of the devil. The Franciscans, thank God for the Franciscans. The Franciscans have the philosophy and the theology of brother, sun, sister, moon. St. Francis followed all creation is good because it is created by God. The devil is incapable of creation because the act of creation is something that takes out of you. It's generosity. And that the devil is incapable of doing. Something out of himself. So these people had been led astray by the devil, the snake. That is theologically acceptable, but not that they're not human. So they began to convert the first ones, the first natives who would accept Christianity. They would baptize them. And the conquerors, the actual militia, didn't like that. Because they had lost everything back home, and now they're getting some land, they're getting the gold from the property of the natives, they're using them and abusing them. And if they are baptized, then I have to acknowledge them as my brothers. I have to be Christian to them. And that's not acceptable in many ways. So they actually start fighting against the friars, against the priests, so that they would not baptize them. Then the natives, in that part, in their group, the natives are actually outraged that there would be natives converting because they're abandoning their gods. The world's coming to an end. So they are actually attacking the converts. And they're attacking the priests who are converting them, who are baptizing them. And they're attacking the militia, they're attacking the conquerors for destroying their temples. So we have Indians against Indians, Spanish against Spanish, Spanish against Indians, and Indians against Spanish. Did I miss anyone? So, in the middle of all of this, a Franciscan friar is sent over as bishop, Fray Juan de Zumárraga. And he finds that they're all destroying everything. They're burning down all of the gods. They're destroying everything they can find with that. And he's sent to bring sort of order, some sort of order into the land. The Franciscans built the first churches out of the pyramids with the same stone as the pyramids. This is the Church of the Holy Cross. The School of the Holy Cross, the Church of St. James. The School of the Holy Cross, where they first begin to learn from the Indians and they begin to teach them as well. There was the first exchange. The Bishop Fray Juan de Zumárraga is sent and he sees everything that's happening. He is pro-baptizing. He is also in favor of evangelizing the natives and accepting them into the church as humans. So there is an attempt made on his life as well. They're trying to kill him as well. So he writes a letter to the King of Spain saying, if there is no divine intervention, the land is to be lost. This is about to go, everything here is about to go into absolute chaos. I cannot control this. The feast day of the Immaculate Conception comes. He is a Franciscan. They have the Immaculate Conception as their patroness. So he prays to God. He prays to our Blessed Mother for help. He sees that everything is beyond his control. So he asks our Blessed Mother to help. And then he goes to bed. Next day, from TLATELOLCO, a native Indian by the name of Juan Diego, originally from CUAUHTLATOAC. He was born in CUAUHTLATOAC. He lived in TLATELOLCO. He would go to TLATELOLCO to attend catechesis and mass. In order to go from the dry land to TLATELOLCO, you have to go through a causeway. It's an island in the middle of the lake. So you have to go through a causeway. To get to that causeway from TLATELOLCO, you have to go by all of this mountain range. It would take him roughly about 4 hours to get to church, to mass. Yeah, he made it on time. Anyway, so he would go on this. Okay, just to give you an idea of the distances. So Juan Diego's going, and when he gets on TEPEYAC hill, suddenly he sees a bright light shining from above, and the birds start singing. He thinks, okay, I'm dead and I'm in paradise. This is the paradise of my ancestors. What he's referring to is the second underworld, paradise on earth, where flowers blossom, birds sing. It's all joy and happiness. It's all the beauty. So suddenly the birds stop singing and the hill begins to answer the song of the birds. And then he says, okay, I'm really dead. I have to be. I mean, I get the bird singing. The hill? Come on. Anyway, the hill answers back, and then there's silence. And he hears a voice calling him. Juanito, Juan Dieguito. Actually, it was Juan Diegotzin. She speaks in Nahuatl. Okay, she speaks to him. Juan Diego spoke no Spanish. So, he goes to the top of the hill, and he finds a woman, 15, 16-year-old young woman. I don't know anymore what to call them. With this whole political correctness, you're going to be going mad. Anyway, young one. He sees a 15, 16-year-old who tells him, I am the ever-Virgin Mary, mother of the one true God for whom one lives. I wish to have a house, church, built in this place, where I will show him, I will make him manifest. There I will give him to you, and I will remain and give all my love, mercy, and compassion to all of my children united in this land. This is actually the short version of the message. It's pure poetry. It's absolutely exquisite. Get a hold of the Nikan Mopoa. You will enjoy it enormously. It's beautiful. So Juan Diego's off to see the bishop. Our Lady tells him, tell the bishop everything that you see and hear. Off goes Juan Diego and gets to see the bishop. And he starts telling him about the bird singing and the hill singing, and there's a light before sunrise and the lady in the top of the hill. And the bishop just looks at him and obviously doesn't believe a word he's saying. So he tells Juan Diego very beautifully, very pastorally. He tells Juan Diego, that is lovely what you're saying. Why don't you come back some other time and tell me more about those wonderful things you're seeing and everything you're narrating. Juan Diego's devastated at the fact that the bishop doesn't believe him. So he goes back to our Blessed Mother and tells her, please send someone else. Send a Spaniard, send a priest, send someone with hierarchy. I'm nothing. I'm the bottom of the ladder. I'm the end of the rope. I'm nothing. I'm the end of the wing. Me capal. I'm nothing. So Our Lady tells him, no, it has to be you. I need it to be you. You're my ambassador. With just that word, you're my ambassador. Of course, you're my child, you're my son, but you're my ambassador. She gives back the dignity that was taken from the Spanish to all of the natives. She raises every single native to the position of child of God and equal with the Spaniards. And then the ambassador carries the words. He doesn't speak his words. He speaks the words of whoever sends him. She is the ambassador of God. She only speaks the words that God, she does the deed of God. So when Juan Diego is speaking, he's now the voice of God through an Indian. So Juan Diego, of course, doesn't reflect on these things. That's just me. So next day, he goes home. Remember, 4 hours there, 4 hours back. So he goes home, goes back next day, and tells the bishop again everything he has seen and heard. The bishop, there was something nagging at the back of his head from the very first time that Juan Diego came with the first message. Everything Juan Diego was saying was theologically and Mariologically perfect. There is no error. So he asks, who is this Juan Diego? They tell him, well, he's a recent convert, he's a catechumen, he's been baptized, been married, he's a widower, grandfather, he's a good and honest man, he's a man who's respected in his community. That's all we know. I mean, that's enough. And then he asks, what's with TEPEYAC? They tell him, well, there used to be a pyramid dedicated to TONANTZIN Coatlicue. Remember the mother, the one with the snakes and the heads and the snakes and snakes and snakes? Her. She was worshipped there. And then the bishop thinks, now I get it. Someone wants me to build a Christian temple to a pagan goddess. Nah, that's not going to happen. So, He tells Juan Diego, bring me concrete proof that what you're saying is true, and I will build the church. To test him. He wants to know if Juan Diego is in. This is a hoax. This has got to be a hoax. Why a church in the middle of nowhere, out on a dry, barren hill on the edge of the lake? And then, second, who is telling Juan Diego? He doesn't speak Spanish. He's only learning the Our Father. Who is telling Juan Diego to say all of the things he said? His worst fear is that it's actually one of his priests. Obviously, it would only be a theologian who can give these messages without a single mistake. So he wants to know if Juan Diego is in on this entire hoax, and he wants to get his hands on whoever is telling Juan Diego to spread these lies. So he tells Juan Diego, bring me concrete proof. Juan Diego does not hesitate, and he says, of course, I'll ask the Lady of Heaven. Absolutely. And then walks out. The bishop tells two of his guards, follow him. Whoever he stops to speak to, I want him. Bring him here. I want him here. And off goes Juan Diego, without stopping to talk to anyone, goes directly to Tepeyac. However, when he reaches the bridge that connects the causeway with dry land, he vanishes. He disappears. The guards look for him and thinking he's hiding somewhere. Then they see that there's really shrubs and nothing but small little plants, thistles, growing on the hill. And then there's no cave. There's obviously no trees. There's nowhere to hide. So they realize he disappeared. He vanished. They go back to the bishop. And they tell the bishop, do not believe him. He's a sorcerer. He's a liar. There's something very strange with this man. Don't believe a word he says. In the meantime, Juan Diego, unaware of what's going on, he goes to the top of the hill and tells Our Lady, the bishop wants proof. Our Lady tells him, okay, go home, get some rest. Tomorrow you come back for the proof for the bishop. Juan Diego goes home to Tulpetlac and finds his uncle sick in bed, dying, with a fever, with a severe fever. So he gets the local medicine man, the shaman. The shaman tries to appease the gods, remember? Everything is punishment from the gods. So he tries to appease the gods. He spends the entire day with the rituals, and they knew medicine, they knew herbs, and they had some medicine. So he tries to heal, give him some comfort to the uncle, then realizes that the uncle there's nothing he can do. So he tells Juan Diego, be happy and rejoice because the God of the sun has the soul of your uncle in his clutches. I'm going to he had a fever, so it's fire. So he's going to take the soul of your uncle. You're going to take your uncle to fight. Juan Diego tells his uncle, prepare yourself for death. And Juan Bernardino tells him, well, I don't want to die as a pagan. Get me a priest to hear my confession. So off goes Juan Diego headed for Tlatelolco to get a priest. But when he reaches the bottom of the hill, he's thinking he didn't show up the day before. So he has no time at the moment. He has to hurry before his uncle dies. So he decides to go around the back of the hill. She was always facing east. So he goes on the west, sorry, she was facing west. He goes on the east side of the hill. He goes around the back of the hill. Little does he know that mothers have eyes on the back of their heads. I mean, they know everything. They always know everything. So Juan Diego goes and he turns around and looks up at the hill and sees Our Lady walking down and starts to call him. He runs away. He starts to run. She appears at the base of the hill and cuts him off. He falls down on his knees and then starts explaining about his uncle's illness and why he hadn't shown, thinking she's going to go bzzzt and that's it, I'm dead. The gods were revengeful. There was no mercy. You did something bad. You paid for it. And you pay for it bad. So Juan Diego's terrified. Or at least very afraid. So Juan Diego starts explaining this. And she tells him the most beautiful words we have from our Blessed Mother. Am I not here who am your mother? Are you not in the crossing of my arms, between the folds of my mantle, under my shadow and protection? The most beautiful image of comfort and consolation. While she's speaking to him, at the same time, she appears to the uncle, to Juan Bernardino, and heals him. She tells him, I am Santa Maria de Guadalupe. Go to the bishop and tell him everything that you have seen and heard. And restores back his health. She tells Juan Diego, do not fear this or any other illness. Do not fear death. Do not fear. Your uncle is now healed. So, the bishop, she tells Juan Diego, go to the top of the hill where we first met, and there you will find some flowers. Cut them and bring them to me. Juan Diego, absolute faith, without a single question, knowing that on December the 12th, on top of that hill, there's frost on the ground, and he's been there before. There's nothing growing on that hill. Still, goes up and finds a garden of roses. Castilian roses, roses he's never seen before. They didn't grow in this continent. They're from southern Spain. The bishop was from southern Spain. So, he picks the flowers, places them on his cloak, and brings them down. Our Lady arranges the flowers. She's the mother. She arranges the flowers. And tells Juan Diego, this is for the bishop, and the bishop alone. Okay. Off goes Juan Diego to see the bishop. When he gets to the bishop's house, the guards are at the door. They ask him, what do you want? Well, to see the bishop. Yeah, right. Go, sit. He sits roughly about 4 hours. Not moving, not going anywhere. With the bundle. The guards look at him, realizing that they're not getting rid of him by ignoring him. They ask him, what do you have there? He says, well, nothing. Nothing for you. Yeah, right. So they pull back his arms, and they tried to grab the roses 3 times. But they later explained that it was as if the roses were embroidered or painted on the cloth. They could touch the cloth, but not the roses. Like a hologram. When you see a hologram, you see a 3-dimensional image, but if you try to touch it, you'll touch only the screen. Yeah, we play with holograms today all the time. They're quite common. Yeah, but this is the 16th century we're talking about. And they already think that he's a little bit of a sorcerer or something. They're already sort of skeptical about him at best. So they get terrified, they get scared. They start screaming and yelling and bust into the room where the bishop is holding audience. Of course, at the sound of the guards screaming and yelling, a group gathers to protect the bishop. Every time anyone was screaming, you would go immediately to defend because they were under constant attack. So a group gathers. They tell the bishop, he's back, and you better see him, tend to him. There's something strange going on with him. You'd see him now. Word to the wise, do not speak to the bishop that way. It's not a pretty picture. You're not going to like it. Anyway, the bishop tells him, okay, let him in. Juan Diego walks in and says, I have the proof that you requested from the Lady of Heaven. The bishop tells him, okay, let's have it. When Juan Diego lets go of his cloak and the roses fall on the ground, the image appears on his cloak. Before the bishop and about 20 witnesses. Well, needless to say, the church was built. Juan Diego spent the last 17 years of his life telling the story to everyone and anyone who would come and listen. They began to arrive at the church, at the small chapel, by the thousands. He asked to be the one to sweep the church, to do the most humiliating job, which was actually to clean the dirt off the floor. He died in 1548, and people revered him as a saint. He was an incredibly holy man. After his death in 1548, somebody painted this man here, this is his signature. This native painted this in the tradition of the Indian scrolls, the native scrolls. We see the cathedral, we see sunrise, we see Our Lady of Guadalupe, we have Juan Diego, we see TEPEYAC Hill, we see Juan Diego and Our Lady of Guadalupe. Oh, sorry, no, ignore that. Now, Our Lady of Guadalupe appears exactly as we see her here. She's exactly like that. There is Our Lady of Guadalupe. She says Guadalupe. She uses an Arab word, which translates as the river of light of love. But it's not exactly the river, it's actually the base of the river, the one that directs the river, that focuses the river of light of love. And the bishop, this is a monastery that is in Extremadura, in Spain. The bishop was from Extremadura. He would recognize the word immediately as being Our Lady of Guadalupe. But the one in Spain is a statue. She's a black Madonna. She's a statue. There was actually controversy about the name. Some Spanish actually wrote letters demanding for the name to be changed, for her to be called Immaculate Conception of Tepeyac. They didn't want her to be confused, so they called her the Immaculate Conception, and this was Our Lady of Guadalupe. She is an Immaculate Conception. So, just so that there's no mistake, Our Lady of Guadalupe is the one I'm going to be talking about, is the one in Mexico. Okay. Now, Juan Diego, his native name was CUAUHTLATOAC, the one that speaks like the eagle. Now, the eagle was the sun, the god of the sun, the greatest of all the gods, the one that speaks like the greatest of all the gods. However, this name was given to him before the Spaniards, before the conquest, before the apparitions. God makes no mistakes. We see, this is the portrait that we have of Juan Diego. This portrait was painted by Miguel Cabrera, more than 100 years after Juan Diego, but this is the closest we have to the likeness of Juan Diego. How are we doing on time? We're okay? We've got a few minutes still. Okay, at Tilma. Our Lady appears on Juan Diego's Tilma. A tilma is a piece of clothing that is made from the fibers of the agave plant. They take the leaves of the agave and then remove all the fleshy substance, the fibers inside each one of the leaves. They are then they're combed, washed, and then dried, spun into a type of yarn. But it's a very coarse fabric. It's very harsh. From this, but it's very strong and very sturdy. From this, they make the fabric, and then sewn in pieces. They have to be they're small because they're made with looms that are tied around the waist, so they're small pieces of fabric. This is an exact reproduction of the tilma, Juan Diego's tilma. So you can see that it is, even though it's close knit, it's still a very rough, very coarse. The isle, the tilma that I brought is for you to get an idea of the actual the fabric and the texture. It is impossible for us to paint a tilma. Technically, she shouldn't exist. The tilma was worn by men, and the common man would wear a tilma that was made of isle, of agave. It was used on the fields. They would carry different things. They would carry the seeds. For example, we have here in one of the codexes, we see a man carrying the seeds on the actual tilma. So it was a very everyday piece of clothing. Men would wear sandals, loincloth, and a tilma. Women wore a skirt, a blouse, and the sandals. The tilma was so intimate to a man that in order to be married, they would tie the tilma to the blouse of the woman. Now, the crown. You might have seen images of Our Lady of Guadalupe with a crown, the crowned images. This was done shortly after the death of Bishop Zumárraga. He died in 1548, and so did Juan Diego. After the death, Bishop Montúfar had authorized the painting. It was not an actual crown that was painted. It was actually just a diadem. Using the rays that were already there, they painted a diadem. In 1745, Mass and office was authorized for Our Lady of Guadalupe by the Pope, Benedict XIV. And this image she had the crown at that point. Miguel Cabrera accompanied, he was a painter. He's one of the most famous painters of Our Lady of Guadalupe. He accompanied a painting. He made a painting of Our Lady of Guadalupe, and at that point she had the crown. So that is why she's so widespread with the crown. But it's 1745. Yet, if we look at, we see here how where the crown used to be. What happened is the paint from the crown fell off. They painted it again. It fell off. They painted it a third time. The bishop at the time says, okay, I think she doesn't want a crown anymore. We stop painting. So the damage was done. So we can see actually the damage. The tilma, Our Lady of Guadalupe, has no damage done by nature. All the damage on the tilma is man-made. Sorry to say. They used to rub metals and swords and different things. Here we have, since 1675, we have another scroll painted telling the story of Our Lady, and we see how there is no crown. In any one of the images that we see here, there is no crown. In 1548, we see no crown. So the crown, if you see a crowned image, the crown was added afterwards. It's not the angels. There were actually painted angels around, as well as with the crown. The angels fell off, and they didn't paint those back again. It was very common. Some people are outraged at the fact that I said, yes, they painted angels. How could they possibly paint it? Take a brush and paint Our Lady of Guadalupe. It was very common at the time to paint her, Queen of Heaven and Earth. The angels assumed Our Lady into heaven. So it's very common for us to find. We have Our Lady of Pilar. She was the patroness of America. Her feast day is on October the 12th. She was the patroness of America, of course, until Our Lady of Guadalupe was made patroness of America. But we see her with angels. The statue of Our Lady of Pilar has no angels. So it was very common at the time. It was not so outrageous. We see angels interacting with our Lord and then crowning our Blessed Mother. It was very common at the time to paint Our Lady with the angels. We actually have a sculpture that depicts Our Lady with the angels and the crown. This is the only one that I have found old from that time with these angels. Now, the only angel that is original is the angel at the base of the image. As you can see, we have an angel here. He has one hand on the cloak, one hand on the dress. The word angel is messenger of God. He brings the message from heaven to earth. The dress is the earth, the mantle is the heavens. Now, for our natives, this would be, they had no angels. The angels are from a Judeo-Christian tradition, from Scripture. But they had no angels. So the man and the wings are separate. We see the wings are green, white, and red. They had the mythology of a butterfly that had the wings of the obsidian blade. I showed you how the blade with the red tip, with the blood, symbolized the offerings to God. So we see the blades being taken to heaven. Now, Our Lady has, sorry about that, I'm losing track of time here. Our Lady has 3 garments that she's wearing. She wears the cloak, the green cloak. She wears a red dress and a blue blouse. A white blouse. The white blouse you can see here on the sleeves and then the top of the blouse. The blouse has gold lace. Gold lace was used only by royalty. She's the queen of heaven and earth. Okay, she has the dress, the red dress, is embroidered with gold lace. She has the lace doesn't follow the folds on the dress. Some people have asked me, so what? The lace was added on? It's fake? It's not original? No, it is original. This is done. The lace was actually used commonly, and it still is, in the Middle East. The Middle Eastern women wear gold embroidered lace over the silk. So if you, where am I? Here we are. If you see this, you have a fabric on the behind. You have the silk, and then the lace draped over it. So the fabric does not follow the lace. The lace is separate. And this is typical from the Middle Eastern women. We see how you can hear it seems as if it's followed, but because it has the light directly in front. But if you take off the light, you can actually see how the lace appears to be floating because the mesh is the same color as the silk behind. So it disappears. We only get the effect of the lace, and it seems that it's floating in front, and therefore the lace doesn't follow. However, it does cast somewhat of a shadow. But it is original. The green color that we have, the mantle is green-blue. It's not exactly blue. It's the same color as the quetzal bird. The quetzal was the most sacred bird that they had because it has the same color as the rainforest. In their mindset, the rainforest is paradise. It is a place with abundance of water, where the vegetation is abundant, the flowers blossom all the time. The birds sing. It is all joy and happiness. It is a place where you don't have to toil for food. The headdress of the emperor, the Aztec emperor, was actually made with these quetzal feathers. And if you see, there's a little, it looks blue on the edge. The feathers are iridescent, similar to that of a peacock or a hummingbird, where depending on where the light hits the feathers, you see different shades. There's a similar effect with the mantle of Our Lady, where you actually, if you take a picture at the basilica, every time you take a picture, it'll look different because of where, depending on where the light is reflecting, that is the shade that you can see. So she is wearing the green, the same as jade. Jade was the most precious stone to them. They used to call the, as a term of endearment, the children, my precious jade. They believed that the green jade, imperial jade, the same color as we have of the quetzal, was the stone that allowed the soul to go to the gods. They would go to lead you to the afterlife. So they would take the jade and they would wear a piece of jade so that when they died, they had jade on them to allow the soul. So the burials, here we have the king Pacal, a Mayan king from Palenque. He was, they have a funerary mask. The jewelry is all of jade. He's buried with different pieces of jade in order for his soul to go directly to the gods. So Our Lady, having a green-blue mantle, the same color as jade, she is the most perfect passage to heaven, to God, and the most precious. If she had been wearing a blue mantle, she would be wearing water. Then it would have been a mistake. So she's wearing the color of heaven, of paradise. The red color of the dress is a color of earth. She's wearing a red dress that symbolizes that she is human. If you see the mantle that is heaven, she's not grabbing the mantle. She's not even touching it. She has heaven bestowed on her, but she is fully human. Her eyes are looking down. Her head is slightly tilted to one side. Her eyes are looking down. If she were looking forward, she'd be a goddess. But her eyes are facing down. Only the gods face forward. She has her hands placed in prayer. There is a divine being above, higher. So she is absolutely human. The red color of the earth comes from the scoria stone, which is a volcanic rock. This, of course, seems like an open wound. It's the color of blood as well. That's why blood is also depicting earth. They believe that the places where there is this volcanic rock, it was a wound that was opened for the goddess of the earth, and that would give the abundance. The soil around volcanoes is very fertile. That is why that's why we have enormous amounts of communities and people living next to volcanoes, because the soil is incredibly rich. So for them, this was the color. That is where they get the color of the earth. The Mayans would bury their dead painted with cinnabar. The bodies would be painted with cinnabar, representing that they were going into the earth. We break here? have to break down. Okay.